All right, so online fraud. This is definitely a topic that I think you can never visit enough. I know quite a few people that have been hit with online fraud, attempted online fraud, as well as crypto online fraud. That's one of the big ones because there is no getting it back. But let's jump into this, and I want to give my thoughts on this, maybe tell some stories. The Deloitte Center for Financial Services projects that AI-generated fraud will reach 40 billion in the United States by 2027. That's a lot of money stolen, just taken from people. The FBI logged more than 22,000 AI fraud complaints in 2025 alone, with reported losses exceeding $893 million. Almost a bill right there. Congressional researchers estimate that fewer than 5% of victims ever report, which means the actual number is many, many times larger than the official figure. And this is true. Most people that get a little bit just take it, and then they just take it as a learned lesson, $1,000, $2,000, $5,000. I mean, I know people that have been hacked out of 100,000 and they don't report it. I mean, they just figured it was like nothing that could be done, so what's the point? So here is what the fraud actually looks like and why the 40 plus solopreneur is specifically in the crosshairs at risk. So you solopreneurs, um, yeah, let's see. Between January and September 2025, AI-driven deepfake fraud caused over 3 billion in losses in the United States. Deepfake-enabled voice phishing attacks increased by more than 1,600% in the first quarter of 2025 compared to the quarter before. 1 in 4 Americans received an AI-generated deepfake voice call in the past year. 1 in 4. That's crazy. I mean, it's a huge number. The reason for the scale is the economics. A synthetic identity kit on dark web markets costs approximately $5. An AI tool subscription capable of generating convincing phishing text, fake invoices, and voice adjacent social engineering costs between 30 and 200 a month. That's crazy. An AI tool subscription, really? That helps you do this. Wow. Must feel pretty good about yourself if that's the business model that you are creating for people, giving them the tools to basically do that. McAfee research established that a convincing voice clone can be built from 3 seconds of audio. An earnings call appearance, a podcast episode, a conference talk, a voicemail greeting, all of that is publicly available material. 3 seconds of audio. The voicemail greeting you recorded in 2019. The one that says, "Hi, you've reached name, blank name, whatever name, leave a message." That is enough. That is sufficient source material for a convincing voice clone. If you have ever left a voicemail, appeared on a podcast, spoken at an event, or been on video call that was recorded, someone with $5 in a subscription has everything they need. This is not a warning about being careless. It's a description of the current state of what the technology can do. Yeah, it's kind of like trying not to be on images anywhere, not to be in a photo. It's pretty much impossible to not be in a photo or not at some point have your voice recorded from something somewhere somehow. Yeah, it's crazy. And it's a real thing, but I think also AI is going to make it easier to catch these kind of people. And that's the one thing that I think is going to catch a lot of criminals off guard is it will reverse, and they'll be able to go and reverse engineer and figure out who actually did it in ways that you're not thinking about right now. So something to think about if you're trying to make a life in this kind of business, the crime business. All right, so there's 3 AI fraud attacks the solopreneur is most exposed to, described as they actually work. The first is a voice clone call, as we're talking about. A fraudster clones the voice of someone you know, a client, a vendor, your accountant. Using audio sourced from publicly available recordings, they call you with an urgent request. A payment to be made before end of day. A bank account change. Access credentials needed immediately. The voice is correct. The urgency is the exploit. The second is the AI generated invoice or business email compromise. An AI tool produces an invoice that is visually perfect. Correct logo, correct formatting, correct contact name, with one digit change in the bank account number. Or it generates an email from what appears to be a vendor's address, instructing you to update their payment details before the next billing cycle. Everything about it looks correct. And then the third is the deepfake video call. In February 2024, engineering firm Arup lost 25.6 million when a finance employee joined a video call in which every participant, including the apparent CFO, was an AI-generated deepfake. The call looked normal. The people on screen looked real. The wire transfer instruction was acted on. That is crazy. And there are a lot of other things that you have to be careful. Like, for example, one of the ones that I've seen is people will reach out to you with an opportunity that sounds really, really good based on what you do, and they'll try to invite you on a Zoom call and say, we have an offer, we'd like to do this. And at first, your instinct is, why the hell do they want to pay me that kind of money? But then you're like, yeah, I'm worth it, and you get on this Zoom call, and what you don't realize is they send you a link to a Zoom call to join, which isn't a real Zoom. It's a fake, very looking, and then when you click on it, you install it. Or what they'll do is say they have their own call software that they want you to join because that's what their company uses. And it might sound like something legit that you've heard of. You just don't have that app. So then they go, just download this and then join the call. And then what ends up happening is while you're on the call, they're gaining access to your computer. So anytime you get on a Zoom, it's almost like you got to have 3 different computers at this point. You got to have one computer for communications that doesn't have access to any of your personal stuff. You have a second computer, which is kind of like your sensitive access information, and then a crypto computer if you do crypto, one that has a complete setup just for that with hot wallets and cold wallets and all that, if that's the route that you're going. But the problem is a lot of people use phones and they have hot wallets and they have, apps. Everybody's so used to just clicking and installing apps that most people don't really think about it. They just kind of go, yeah, hold on, let me install it. So, yeah, those are the 3 most common, but, there's a lot more out there. So I think you can never cover this too much. All right, so why you are the target, the solopreneur, especially somebody in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. That is an age bracket that is highly targeted because a lot of times people in their 50s and 60s just aren't as tech savvy. They're not aware, and they just don't see it coming. Enterprise fraud teams have begun adapting. Large organizations are implementing multi-person authorization requirements for wire transfers, callback verification protocols, and AI detection tools. Solopreneurs have none of that by default. The structural exposure is specific. No IT department, no fraud team, one person making all final decisions, which means no second set of eyes on a payment instruction before it goes out, transaction amounts that fall below the threshold that trigger enterprise fraud detection. Good point. Long-standing client relationships that create the trust an attacker can exploit. And because solopreneurs often operate across multiple tools, platforms, and accounts, a single compromised interaction can cascade into several. The fraudsters know this. The attacks are not random. They are calibrated to the operating reality of a one-person business. I do believe that for the solopreneur, there needs to be some sort of AI fraud detection system that is constantly upgraded. And I'm sure there will be one that kind of just takes a look at, almost everything that you're doing and looks for any type of sign, any type of clue that there could be something fishy going on. You're starting to see more and more of stuff like this, but this is going to be an arms race. Scammers against the white hat, against the security. It's gonna provide a lot of money, and the truth is a lot of security software producers, security firms, they put things out on purpose so that people get hacked, exploited, so that they can then hit you up and sell you their protection. It's a dirty, cutthroat business for sure. Yeah, so like the transaction amount that fall below enterprise fraud detection thresholds. This is the technical way of saying the amount a solopreneur typically moves: 5, 10, $20,000, a couple thousand here and there. They just do it on scale, right? It's below the automated alert level at most banks and payment platforms. It is large enough to be a catastrophic. It's not, it is large enough to be a catastrophic loss for a one-person business. It is small enough to be noise in the fraud detection system. You are not too small to be a target. You are specifically the right size to be one. So keep that in mind, you solopreneurs. I mean, a lot of people I know that work online and stuff, they're like, I don't really check any emails anymore. They only use certain apps. They're very careful. Anything that's even slightly off or anonymous, they just literally just ghost it, which is kind of sucks, because then a lot of people that want to actually pay you money for your service get ghosted, and they just think that you're flaky. They don't realize it's because you just don't trust something coming from somebody you're not familiar with. All right, so let's talk about some habits. Hopefully this can save a few people if you watch this video. We don't have a lot of people watching our videos, but we don't care because we enjoy putting out this kind of content, and it's relatively new. And YouTube kind of sucks these days. It literally hates the creators and does everything they can to, well, not really support creators, but just somehow take from them, demonetize them, just cut their views in half, cut their subscriptions in half, don't send stuff to their subscribers. Anything that they can use their algorithm to eke out, some form of profit for the next 2 or 3 quarters without thinking about the long-term effect of, basically turning their creators to different platforms or just going, quit. What's the point? Anyways, that was off topic. So let's talk about 3 habits, all free, all preventative against the majority of AI fraud attacks. First, any payment instruction or account change that arrives by phone, email, or message, verify it through a separate channel before acting, not a reply to the message, not a call to the number in the email. Call the client or vendor directly on a number you already have stored. Confirm the request and then proceed. This single habit stops the voice clone call, the fake invoice, and the BEC attack in almost every scenario. Second, establish a code word with your 2 or 3 most important clients and vendors. Something short, agreed in person or via a previously verified channel. If either party needs to make an urgent out-of-pattern request, the code word is required. It's not that complicated. I've told a lot of people about that. Some random word that, say, you and the family agreed upon in person, and you don't ever really say it, but if there's ever something of an emergency that comes along, you just say code word, and if it's a scam, they're not going to know it unless you recorded it somehow, or you make it so obvious. It is how high trust relationships have always handled sensitive authorization. You are formalizing something that should already exist. Third, treat urgency as a red flag. Now that is a very good one. When something or somebody reaches out and says this is urgent, I need it really quick, they're trying to get you to overlook the obvious. They're trying to get you to overlook everything because it is urgent and needs to happen right now. Not a reason to act faster. Every AI fraud attack is engineered around time pressure. The voice says before end of day. The email says the payment is overdue. The video call says we need to move on this now. Urgency is not a reason to skip verification. Urgency is the signal that verification is required. Yes, so treat urgency as a red flag. This is also coincidentally good advice for every other area of business. The vendor who needs a decision today. The client who says the opportunity closes at midnight. The email that says your account will be suspended unless you verify your details in the next 4 hours. BS. Every AI fraud attack is built on urgency because urgency is the most reliable way to make a careful person act without thinking. The defense is not to notice when you feel rushed and slow down precisely because you feel rushed. So stamp that into you. Anything that makes you feel rushed, online, on phone, kind of hit the brakes. Wait a second, this feels rushed. All right, guys, so the AI fraud wave is here. The attacks are sophisticated, inexpensive to run, and specifically calibrated to the solopreneur operating reality. The defense is not a technology, it is a protocol. Verify through a separate channel, establish a code word, slow down when you feel rushed, and then subscribe to channels like this where we will hit on these subjects. So hit that subscribe, and we'll keep diving into these topics that really are important and they can affect or disrupt people in that age group. I say 40s, 50s, and 60s because that's my age bracket. But if you're in your 30s or 20s, this is all valuable. And if you're in your 70s, it's valuable. I mean, there's a lot of people now in their 70s that are creating YouTube channels and they're online, because they got into this 20 years ago in their 50s. And this is... Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and end the video before I ramble on and monologue into more off-topic stories. But as I always say, until the next video, let's just get it.